And why we're here at NYU, our brother, our friend, somebody who's really helped us to launch our podcast, because when it comes to podcasting, my brother created what is, it's been nominated, right? Podcast of the Year in 2024, the host of Empire City, and our brother and friend, Dr. Chenjerai Kumanyika. What's up, brother?
What's up? My name is Chenjerai Kumanyika. I'm an assistant professor here at NYU Journalism. I'm a long time, I make podcasts, but I'm a long time sort of student, and I consider, co-conspirator with One Hood.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? Give it up for One Hood. Everybody.
Yes.
I just got to say, I was an early adopter
Definitely.
when it came to One Hood. You know what I'm saying? I was studying One Hood since probably 2007.
Yes.
And I said, wait a minute, before people had really started to understand how do we leverage the technology and the internet when we're talking about the fight against mass incarceration, the fight against police brutality and killing. I started watching. I was like, I don't know what I saw. Whatever. I was in grad school, right?
Yeah.
I said, I see what everybody's talking about in these journals, but I see what One Hood is doing in the streets.
Yes.
And I focused my whole dissertation on studying One Hood because I said, not just that I want to lift up that work to everybody else, but I'm like, y'all need to be paying attention. I said, media scholars, y'all need to focus over here.
Yes.
And so anyway, I'm a longtime fan. I just want to make sure that's always understood.
I love that. Yeah. That feels good, man. Pause.
Yeah, that
feels good.
Pause. Yes, I appreciate that. And
it's good to hear, man. It's good to have our work appreciated.
100%. And right, so if you're in academia, a lot of times we've had this, where people in academia, if you search One Hood, what you'll find is actually your writing, your dissertation, the work you did on our organization. So we appreciate that. But right now,
yes,
speaking of academia,
yes, you've been like ground zero in a lot of what's been happening here in New York. I know Columbia has been like the flashpoint. But NYU has been protesting as well. You yourself have protested. As a professor, you yourself have been arrested.
Right.
To me, one of the most powerful episodes of Empire City is you kind of talking about your arrest and your daughter and putting it in the context and history of NYPD. Yesterday, there was a press conference that made national, international news about Columbia being sued for Columbia University's total capitulation to the Trump administration. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened yesterday and what that suit means, and I guess how folks can support that work?
Absolutely. So, one thing I also share with One Hood is I wear a lot of different hats, right?
Yes.
And even within my advocacy, I'm wearing different hats. So it's true that I was a founding member of the faculty and staff for Justice at Palestine here, which was about supporting some of the student protests, basically just making sure that as students and as just people's rights weren't being violated, because we found that some of the institutions, including the NYPD, deal with people differently, whether you're talking about students or faculty. But I also currently at-large council member of an organization called the American Association of University Professors. We are a nationwide organization that represents faculty and faculty unions all across the whole country. We have over 500 chapters. And so, at like a lot of universities, most universities you hear of, we have a chapter. And we partner together with the American Federation of Teachers, which is one of the largest unions in the country, to file 2 lawsuits against the Trump administration. And I should say what we talked about yesterday was one lawsuit with AFT, just to get these facts correct. And then there's another lawsuit that we worked with the Knight Foundation on. And I'll talk about each one of those. The one that we talked about yesterday was, you may have heard that the Trump administration is threatening to cut hundreds of millions of dollars of federal funding. And so essentially what they're doing is they're basically trying to hold Columbia and universities like it at almost like ransom, saying we're going to hold these funding dollars as ransom unless you crack down on certain kinds of speech, particularly speech that is perceived to be, in support of Palestinian lives, which is then technically they say it's anti-Semitic speech, but because they use a particular definition of anti-Semitism that says anything that's critical of the state of Israel is anti-Semitic, and they then are taking advantage of something called Title VI. That's like this sort of Title VI provision that sort of says universities have to fight discrimination. Now, I want to be really clear and precise. It's important about what we're actually saying here. This lawsuit doesn't argue that there's never been any discrimination, any anti-Semitism anywhere. Anti-Semitism is, and discrimination, racism, sexism, those things exist everywhere. Islamophobia,
right.
Those things exist everywhere. And it's possible that they were somewhere on Columbia's campus. But what this lawsuit says is that the federal government is required to follow specific procedures to determine that. And they did not do that. We know this Trump administration is out of control.
Right.
They just say we want to do stuff. And so what we're seeing is them deporting people who are, they're targeting people who are vulnerable, but they're now targeting people who have green cards, who are citizens, based on claims that they have not validated. And so this is one lawsuit that pushes against that. And I can tell you about the other one in a minute.
Okay. I think it's fascinating because we are like in real time watching videos of, like you said, whether it be, people that have green cards or people that have come here to study. We just saw the young woman at Tufts University, the video of her being circulated where, what it plainclothes officers with masks on. Being arrested. I guess another student, it was like two other students since then I've found out have been arrested as well. You're talking about, you're part of this faculty to protect students. Like, is there a conversation on campus about like specifically students who are green card holders, who are maybe from another country or here on visas that have participated in protests? Is it like stay home? Is it like just come, because there was another, I think Colombian student that was also, she sued because they had like a warrant out for her arrest.
Yunso Chung was also sort of detained, and so she sued. I believe this student at Tufts, Romesa Ozturk, she's actually in Louisiana.
Right.
They
yes.
took her,
yes.
like you said, these weren't even named people recognizable, identifiable as officers. So, I just want to be clear, because in this role, I wear my AAUP hat. This is an effort to intimidate universities and to try to dictate and control higher education. Really, to what I would argue, this is now Chenjerai's words, not the lawsuit, but I would argue is a white supremacist agenda.
Yes.
But the lawsuit is just simply saying that this is illegal, and there's specific claims and legal grounds on which we're making it. So I think, but it's an effort to try to determine it, because how it functions, regardless of what the intention is, how it functions is that, it puts universities in a position to say, if you want to speak about anything to do with the Palestine issue, but also you look at some of the other, if you want to speak about anything to do with race, diversity, all those things, you have to be shook, particularly on campuses where you have all these international folks. And so I will say, in terms of concrete resources, we at the AAUP have provided, some linkages to stuff that has to do with like knowing your rights and all those other kinds of things. There's a organization called Sanctuary Campus that has all kinds of great resources, because you got to know your rights, because some of these ICE agents will roll up on you with something that they claim is a warrant that's not even a warrant.
Right.
And they will, but your rights are different depending on whether you're on campus or if in your dorm or if you're at home. And so these are things that we need to be educated about. I will say, sadly, the universities, Columbia, and I will also say both NYU, have not stepped up to really provide enough information. So people on our campuses right now, a lot of people are shook.
Right.
They're not stopping the protests, but they don't know. They're like, if I'm on a visa, can I say this? What can I say?
Right.
What can I teach? Should I come to class? These are questions people have, and the administrations have played it, shaky. And then we see in Columbia, the reason why we found out what Columbia did was because an email was leaked that showed that behind the scenes, while they were telling everybody, oh, calm down, behind the scenes, Columbia actually was in negotiations with the Trump administration to say, yes, we'll do this. Which again, this is not part of the lawsuit, but I feel that's unacceptable.
Right.
This is what's interesting to me is Donald Trump was just in the news, and I don't know to which exactly he was referring to, but he used the words witch hunt, right? And I believe this was in reference to what just happened with SecDev and the leaked Signal chat, right? And what's fascinating is that he used specifically a witch hunt against his administration, which is really what's happening right now is a political witch hunt against, like Chen just said, like vulnerable people. And you don't have to look far back in the annals of American history to see that this isn't something new for America. They did this to the Japanese in 1942 to 1946, and this is a playbook from Nazi Germany within 1933 to 1945, I believe, when the concentration camps were running. What is terrifying about this, and I have said this many, many times just on this show and then also like on other social media channels, as someone who's a dual citizen, your status is of no consequence to the American government and to this Trump administration right now. They don't care if you're legal. They don't care what your status is. They don't care how you got here. If you say the words, I don't agree with Trump or simply free Palestine, that is grounds for prosecution, persecution, detainment, incarceration, and possible deportation.
Right.
And for a lot, and like you were just saying, for a lot of these students, for a lot of these professors, if you don't know what you don't know, what you can and can't say in terms of legal status of like, when these people roll up on you on the campus or where your standing is, it's terrifying. Right? Because you could be snatched out of your house, you could be snatched out of a classroom, you could be just snatched up off the road just for existing, really, and exercising free speech. And I think, like, I share the sentiments of a lot of people where this is something that is fascism, is wholesale fascism.
1,000%.
The violence and the fear that this instills on these already shook, vulnerable immigrant populations is something that, it really is a power move. But I don't know why anybody is surprised, because Trump said he was going to do this from the jump.
Right.
He let you know what time it was before he even got on the ballot. It was like, yo, I'm running on hard immigration laws.
I want to pass it to Miracle. I think the interesting thing about this, though, that's different, that Chenjerai spoke about is the actual extortion.
Yeah.
We're in Pennsylvania, right? The University of Penn is the federal government is withholding $1 billion, $1 billion in federal research because.
Say that number again.
$1 billion
with a B, right?
Because Penn had a trans athlete. So again, this is attacking vulnerable people, and basically saying that if you're going to stand with these vulnerable communities, that we're going to take all of your money from you. And what position that puts you in, Miracle?
So to stay on, brand, again, all of these things are happening.
Yes.
Because when we had the opportunity to stick up and fight for people, we did not.
Correct. Who didn't fight?
When Biden had the opportunity to protect trans folks, when the Democrats had the opportunity to stand up for immigrants and Palestinians, we refused to do so. But also, I think it's even more sinister because when I look at the deportations, I see the gang database. When I look at people saying, they're saying, oh, you said this word, therefore you are this person, you have this tattoo, therefore you are this person. I look at LAPD gangs. When I see ICE, those are the comparisons that I make. And it's one of these things where, because we have not built Black liberation within the United States, this imperial boomerang is now coming back and circling back to the people who are forced to flee here and were not a part of this civil rights infrastructure, and thought that if they didn't say these things or didn't move a certain way, they would be okay. Because let's be very clear, the people who are being deported or even renditioned were folks who were not actually out protesting. The girl, she wrote she was a signatory to an op-ed. Right? She was not out here writing certain things out here. She was doing the academic way to protest, which is writing a statement, putting it out there, putting out her, her academic scientific thesis, and still is now in Louisiana after a judge said she's not allowed to leave the state of Massachusetts within 48 hours. They already had her. They keep violating the laws, and no one's going to do anything about it, right? And
it was an African brother too. I forget his name.
Mahmoud Tall, I believe.
Yeah, Mahmoud Tall. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mamadou.
Yeah, there you go.
And I think
Mahmoud Khalil. Mamadou Tall.
He tweeted something. I think he might be in Louisiana too. Go ahead, Miracle.
Same thing. Biden threatened to deport him at first, and now he's trying to sue. And then the courts, technically, when you're going before the courts, you are not supposed to have any adverse government reaction to go against you because you're supposed to have like your day in court. And the court was like, yeah, whatever, surrender to ICE, right? Even though you're trying to go through the necessary process and follow the correct rules and procedures. And I think what we're about to start to see is law is fake, right?
Ooh,
law does not exist. And we are really going to see in real time how many people are actually vulnerable. I think it's even more insidious. I think what this administration is doing is white supremacy, because who is the group that they do not want to be Americans? It's black people. Who is the group that they want to expel? It's black people. All the arguments you're making against immigrants, all the arguments you're making against Palestinians
falls down on
is
us.
The same arguments you can make around black people. Oh, well, there's too many black people to kick out of the United States of America. How many immigrants did they say they were going to kick out of the United States of America?
Right.
Oh, black people built this country. Oh, Palestinians said that was their land and they built it as well. We didn't care when it was them. We're not going to care when it's you.